Okay, welcome back. It's been 4 weeks since we have learnt some Shmuel Bet. So I don't expect you to have a clue what we were talking about. And I didn't until last night when I listened to the end of last week's shiur. But you need to buckle in today because we are going all over the place. We are going on a journey. I just share you my screen right now. You will see what's going on. Oh, here's Ivor. Let's let Ivor in. Okay, Ivor is now in. Can you hear us, Ivor? We can't see you or hear you, but can you hear us? Yes, there he is. No, we've got a blank screen. Anyway, we are going to dedicate this shiur this morning to the memory of Ivor's father, Dov Ben Harav. Can't remember. Ivor, help me out.
Helping you. Hi. Hide the blinkers on.
There we are. There we go. Dov Ben
Dov Ben Yaakov Yitzchak.
Ben Yaakov Yitzchak is his Yortzeit today. And for those of you who are interested, you can read an obituary of Ivor's father, which was printed in the Jewish Chronicle in 2003 after he passed away. Ivor gave it to me to read last night, and it is phenomenal. He was a great man, and we should all aspire to the kind of activities that he did. He was a massive Zionist in charge of all sorts of things, one of the earliest members of Mizrahi, and he was a great man. And it's a privilege to dedicate the shiur to his memory today.
Wow.
Right, you can see the screen. Can you see the top of the screen here where my arrow is? Yeah? Can you see all the top of the screen where all these little yeah, well, that's where we're going today. We're going to go all those different places.
Wow.
Okay. So buckle in, everyone, because we're going on a tour of Tanakh today. Let's just start by going to our chapter 3 of Shmuel Bet, and remind ourselves where we were holding. Just a quick recap of what's happening in this chapter. Avner, the general of Shaul, crosses sides, goes to David. David accepts him with open arms, as it were. Avner says, I can deliver to you the northern kingdom of Binyamin and Israel, and we will have a united kingdom, which is what David wanted. And so David accepted that, and off he went. Avner went off to do that. But before he could arrive, Yoav, the general of David, came back from having been out killing folk, and said to David, what are you talking about? You've been duped. Avner is a spy. What have you sent him off to do? We've given him all your plans. He's gonna go and tell the other side what you're up to. We don't hear what David's response is to that. Over here, if you have a look, Jeffrey, if you're just when you've had a little swig there, read for us chapter 3, 24 and 25.
So Joab came to the king and said, what have you done? Behold, Abner came to you. Why did you send him away and allow him to leave? You know, Abner, son of Ner, that he has come to entice you and to learn of your comings and goings and to learn all that you do.
So Yoav thinks Avner's a spy. What does David say? Nothing. David doesn't say yes, no, please, thank you, nothing. Right? Next verse, 26.
Joab then left David's presence and sent messengers after Abner. They brought him back from Bor-Hasirah, but David did not know.
Right. So Yoav takes the law into his own hands. He goes after Avner, and as you know, he kills Avner. We talked about it in detail. And this caused David a great deal of sorrow because what David was trying to do was to unite the people. Avner was going to help him do this. Not only has Avner not helped him do it, but we have a situation where the general of Shaul has now been killed by the general of David. So David is now expecting Soros. So he has to work very hard to avoid a civil war as a result of Yoav's actions. So as we know, we went through this last time a month ago, he does four things in order to prevent this disaster happening of Binyamin and Shaul's team, as it were, attacking David and not coming into the covenant. He curses Yoav. He laments Yoav. What else did he do? He rends his clothes, and he eulogizes Yoav. So he goes out of his way. Those of you who are learning Sanhedrin with us know that we've learned loads of things from this, things about how you mourn and about how a king mourns, but that's to be put on one side for the moment. What we spoke about last time at the end of the last shiur were the curses that David gave onto Yoav. Can anybody remember what they were before I show you them back on the screen? What were the four? I think there were 4 or 5 curses that David gave on Yoav for having killed Avner. Anybody remember? Okay, well, there it is on verse 29, Jeffrey, please.
Oh, sorry. The guilt shall rest upon the head of Joab and upon all his father's house, and may there never cease from Joab's house contaminated with men, lepers, those who lean on crutches, who fall by the sword, and who lack food.
Okay, so what is the courses? What are the curses? First one, STD, sexually transmitted disease. The issue, the Zav, is a type of tumor which comes from sexual diseases. Sarat, that is leprosy of some sort. One who leans on a staff, that means he's going to become lame. He's going to have something wrong with his feet, can't walk. Falls by the sword, he's going to be killed in battle. And the 5th one, he's going to lack bread. He's going to be starvation. So David gives 5 curses onto the house of Yoav. 5 curses onto the house of Yoav. And what I said to you last time, I showed you that towards the end of last time, I showed you a Gemara in Sanhedrin in page 48b, going into 49a, which at our current rate we will get to in approximately another 6 years. So I don't expect you to remember it, but here it is. There is the Gemara in Sanhedrin 48b. And the Gemara says, let's just go back a bit here. There we go. Have a look at this. This is really interesting. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Kol klalot shekilel David et Yoav, all the curses which David cursed Yoav, nitkaimu bezaro shel David. And they were fulfilled not on Yoav, but on David. David curses Yoav, and David's descendants get the curses. Why is that? Why is that? Why would David's family get the curses rather than Yoav?
According to what you said last
We're
time,
not allowed to. Aren't we?
One sec. First of all, Jeffrey, then Hannah.
I think that we're not allowed to give curses.
Well, that may well be the case, but he did. I mean, can you give curses? Well, no, you shouldn't curse anybody, really. But David cursed Yoav. He did. Why did he get the curses back on himself? Hannah?
according to what you said last time, it's if the curses are not justified.
Correct. If the curses are not justified, it's a bit like Adim Zomamim. Remember, we talked about the false witnesses. Remember that? We spoke about the false witnesses. If somebody accuses somebody falsely, the punishment that the person would have got had their accusation been upheld is given to the people who accused falsely, the witnesses that were accused falsely. It's called Adim Zomamim. So in other words, if two people come along and say, I saw so-and-so killing so-and-so, and therefore the perpetrator needs to be put to death, those witnesses, if they're proved to be false witnesses, they are themselves put to death. So here it's the same thing. David cursed Yoav, and according to some opinions at least, Yoav did not deserve to be cursed. David was at least in some regard guilty of the crime himself. Now that's a very bold statement. Before we go on and look at how these curses were fulfilled in David's family, which is what all this journey is going to be about, let's just go back to the Pasuk and see, why did I say that some people feel that David was at least in some part guilty of the crime as well as Yoav?
Keeping stum.
Yes, keeping stum. Thank you, Michael. Shtika kehoda'a damye. Silence is acquiescence. When Avner, Jeffrey just read it out. When Avner went off and Yoav came and said to David, what have you done? David did not say to him, no, Yoav, you're wrong. Over here it is. The end of verse 24. No, verse 20, end of verse 25. Jeffrey just read it out. Read it again for us, Jeffrey.
You know, Abner, son of Ner, that he has come to entice you and to learn of your comings and goings, and to learn all that you do.
Now, if that was Yoav said that to David, and David would have said, no, Yoav, you're wrong. He's not come to entice me. He's not come as a spy. I've questioned him properly. I am satisfied as the leader of this people that he is genuine, and I have accepted what he's got to say, and I do not believe what you're telling me, and I'm the leader, and you just have to accept that. Had David said that, Yoav would not have gone off and killed Avner.
Well, he might have done.
Ah, exactly. I was going to say, or would he? Why might he have done, Jeffrey?
Well, because he was the bitter enemy. And, you know, when you get into a situation where it's life and death and your bitter enemy is there, you're going to do him in.
Worse than that, what had he done? What had Avner done?
Killed his brother.
Killed his brother, Asahel. So the chances are that Yoav would have done it anyway. I think that's fair to say. However, David could have, as the king, predicted that Yoav would have gone off on one. He knows that these Bnei Tzeruya, Anshe Tzeruya, the brothers Avishai, Yoav, and Asahel, the sons of Tzeruya, his sister, were hot-headed. He knew that. And he should have, as the king, should have restrained Yoav. Not only did he not restrain him, he didn't say anything.
What he should have done, he should have actually said to him, "Look, I know, maybe I don't trust him," because I don't think he did trust him completely. But he should have actually said, "Don't do anything about it. Let's see how it pans out."
He should have given him instructions not to do anything about it. Correct. That's the point. Not only did he not give instructions on what to do about it, he didn't say anything. And if you take the acceptance of silence is acquiescence, which we do believe, where do we hear that? We spoke about it last time in the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa with the destruction of the temple. Remember that story that we learn every Tisha B'Av? The bottom line of that story is that the silence of the rabbis who did not object when he was chucked out led to the destruction of the temple indirectly. So there are those that say that David was actually complicit and partially guilty for the death of Avner. And therefore, the curses that he gave to Yoav would only be fitting to come on him as well.
Only on him? Why on his children?
Well, that's how it goes, Michael. I'm afraid we visit the sins of the fathers upon the sons. Usually, we have to accept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has some kind of justice system, which means that everything works out fine in the end, and that if somebody cops for it, they deserved it individually and not just because of their father's sins. But there is definitely an issue of punishments being held over to further generations. That is well-recognized technique, if you like, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a fair question to raise, because, as we'll see, these curses do not come on David. They come on David's descendants, in some cases, many generations later. So let's go back to our Gemara in Sanhedrin and carry on. Rav Yehuda Amarav says that all the curses which David cursed Joab were ultimately fulfilled in David's descendants. So let's just say what they were again. The sexually transmitted disease, the leprosy or tzarat, the lame thing, can't walk, dies by the sword, and lacking bread, starvation. 5 things. Okay, I'm not going to ask you if you know where they are, because you won't. So I'm just going to take you to them one at a time. Okay, the first one comes over here in Malachim Aleph. Malachim Aleph, and it says, yes, no, before we get to, this is in Malachim Aleph, before we get to the individual ones, look over here. This is in Malachim Aleph. This is in the reign of King Solomon, the son of King David. We'll get to it eventually. But what happens is Yoav is being pursued by Solomon, or Solomon's troops. King Solomon was given an instruction. King David gave him an instruction on his deathbed. What was his instruction? Michael?
Kill him.
Yes, he was given. David gave
Kill
Shlomo.
Yoav.
Kill Yoav. Right. So Shlomo took it upon himself to do that. Yoav, well, let's have a look. Jeffrey, on the screen, please. Verses 29, 30, and 31.
And it was told King Solomon, that Joab fled into the tabernacle of the Lord, and behold, he is by the altar. And Solomon sent Ben-Ahu, the son of Yehoiada, saying, go fall upon him.
Okay, stop there for a second. So that should say it was told to King Solomon. There's a word missing there. That's why you struggled with that. It didn't make sense. But it was told to King Solomon that Yoav had gone into the tabernacle of the Lord, which is the Mishkan, right? Just as a by the way, for those members of Poleg Shul, Banaihu. Have you ever heard that name before? Yeah. Anybody know a Banaihu?
One of Yuval's sons.
Yes, one of Yuval's sons is called Banaihu. Yes. So he sent Banaihu ben Yehoiada, saying, "Go and fall upon him," meaning kill him. Now, what is another name for the Mishkan in English? How would you? We hear it's called the tabernacle. What might you call the Mishkan in English, if not the tabernacle?
Holy of Holies?
No.
That's part of the tabernacle, correct?
Temple.
But you're on the yes, and all of those things are something beginning with a word S, with the letter S.
Sanctuary or not sanctuary?
Sanctuary, correct, Peter. Sanctuary. Sanctuary. What does sanctum mean in Latin?
Holy.
Holy, correct. How do we describe the word sanctuary in English?
You're not allowed to do anything to anybody if they're in sanctuary.
Yes, correct. And where does that come from, Michael?
Thomas a Becket.
Okay, and where did he get it from?
Henry VIII.
He got it from here. He got it from here. Yoav has fled into the temple. He's holding on to the horns of the altar. And that is meant to be a place of
Safety.
sanctuary.
Sanctuary,
Yeah, place of sanctuary. That's where the word sanctuary in English comes from. That if you were in the temple, or in this case, the Mishkan, and you were holding on to the altar of the Lord, you were not allowed to, nobody was allowed to kill you. And so this is what happened. So Shlomo sends Benaiah off to kill Yoav. Yoav thinks he's safe because he runs into the Mishkan. Verse 30, Jeffrey.
Joab and his brother Abishai had killed Abner because
No. 30 on the screen, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Benaiah came to the tabernacle of the Lord and said to him, "Thus said the king, come forth." And he said, "No, for I will die here." And Benaiah brought back word to the king, saying, "Thus spoke Joab, and thus he answered me." And the king said to him, "Do as he said, and fall upon him, and bury him, that you may take away the innocent blood which Joab shed from me and from my father's house."
Okay, so Shlomo says, I'm not interested in sanctuary. I'm not interested in him claiming, if you like, diplomatic immunity by hanging on to the altar's horns. Go and kill him anyway, because this is the word of my father, and he goes and he kills him for that. Now, so that's Yoav. That's now.
There's an interesting part of that comment that says, For he spilled innocent blood from my father's house.
Okay. Go on.
I'm curious as to exactly who that's referring to.
Who do you think it's referring to?
Avner.
No, I'm still back at the stage where Avner's in trouble because of the fighting of the 12 youths that he suggested, which
Okay,
led
well,
to civil war and the spilling of innocent blood.
okay. So remember, this is Shlomo speaking.
Yes.
Shlomo says that Yoav has killed innocent blood from my father's house. And who is he referring to? You've mentioned one is Avner. Who's the other one?
Asahel?
Asahel. And why are they called from my father's house?
Well, why are they called innocent blood?
Because this is Shlomo speaking.
Yeah.
Shlomo thinks they're innocent.
David's nephew was.
Yes, they were David's nephews. They were Shlomo's first cousins.
Yeah.
So of course Shlomo thinks they're innocent. This is not the Tanakh saying they were innocent. This is Shlomo saying that he thinks they're innocent.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this is what happened to Yoav. We go a little bit further down. We can see verse 34 on the screen, Jeffrey.
And Benaiah, the son of Yehuda, went up and fell upon him and slew him, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness.
So that's how he came to get his comeuppance. So now then, let's have a look at the 4 curses and the 5 curses and see how they actually came upon the house of David. Right. Who was Shlomo's son who took over from him as king?
Rechavam.
Say again, Hannah.
Rechavam.
Rechavam, correct. Rechavam. Rechavam was the son of Shlomo, who took over the kingship from Shlomo Melech, and it was on his watch that the kingdom split into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Remember, it had been split already before David united it. The time that we're discussing in our chapter is a time when it was split prior to David uniting it. David then unites it, as we'll see in the next couple of chapters, and it remains united under the leadership of David and Shlomo. And that's a period of approximately 73 years. Rechavam, the next king, comes along, and just as a matter of interest, have a look at verses 18 and 19 that I have highlighted on the screen. Jeffrey, on the screen, 18 and 19.
And King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was in charge of the tax, and all Israel pelted him with stones, and he died. And King Rehoboam exerted himself to get up to into his chariot to flee Jerusalem. So Israel revolted against the house of David until this day.
That was what happened when the split occurred. Why did the split occur?
Overtax.
Yes, overtaxing the people. That is why they ultimately revolted. We'll get to it eventually. But what the people came to Rechavam when he first ascended the throne after Shlomo's death. The people sent a delegation to the king and said, "Your father taxed us to kingdom come. Why did Shlomo tax the people so highly?
To build a temple.
To build the temple. So the temple is now built. So the people came to Rechavam, the new king, and said, "Hey, king, ease off the tax, will you? It's tough. We can't deal with this." And so his advisors said to him, "I think that you should listen to them. You should ease the tax burden." And what did he do?
He didn't agree.
He didn't agree, and he increased the tax burden even more. And that is what caused the split in the kingdom. Ultimately, it cost us 10 tribes who were eventually exiled by Nebuchadnezzar. And we, the small remnant of the Israelite nation, are just the tribe of Yehuda, the tribe of Binyamin, and a bit of the tribe of Levi. All the others were lost. And if you boil it right down to its bottom line, they were lost because Rechavam failed to listen to his advisors to reduce the tax burden on the people. That is an interesting story for us to concentrate on. However, that is not our subject for today. What has this got to do with our curses? Well, have a look at this word over here in verse 18 on the screen. Jeffrey read it and said, King Rechavam exerted himself to get up into his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. There's the Hebrew. La'alot b'merkava. To go up into a merkava. What is a merkava?
It's a war chariot.
It's a chariot, correct. What is the modern name for a tank in Israel?
Merkava.
The Merkava. That is the name of the tank in Israel, is called the Merkava. My son Hudi was a tank driver in a Merkava Shtayim, which was an old-fashioned tank. Just when, as soon as, more or less as he left, they moved to the Merkava Arba, to the Merkava 4. So they're much more sophisticated than they were. But this is the same word, Merkava. Now, there is another place in the Torah where the word Merkav, or this similar word, is applied. And that is relevant to our curse. I'm going to show it to you now, unless David Marks can tell us where it is.
Parashat Mitzorah.
Correct.
B'chol HaMerkav.
There we go. Excellent. There it is. If you read that for us on the screen, Jeffrey.
Any riding gear upon which the man with the discharge will ride becomes unclean.
So there's the word, Merkav. So that is called a Gezerah Shavah, type of Gezerah Shavah, where we see similar words in Tanakh and we apply one to the other. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, our Gemara says that because the chapter here talking about Rechavam uses this word Merkava, it's a hint to this word in Vayikra, which is talking about the unclean discharge, the Zav. Can you see that? Zav. Now, if we go to our curse, what was the curse? Where's the curse gone again? Here, verse 29. There will not be from the Yoav and his father's house Zav. Can you see that? So we have two connections there. So this shows us that the first curse of Zav, of the sexual disease, came upon David's house with his grandson, Rechavam. Okay, that's number one. What was the second curse?
Leprosy. Zrat.
Leprosy, correct. Leprosy. Now, which king who was the descendant of David suffered from leprosy?
I remember the name, but he was told, he asked a prophet whether or not he would die from the disease, and the prophet said yes.
Okay. That is a story. You're right. That is the story of, if I'm not mistaken, Tzidkiyahu. But this is a different one that the Gemara brings. The Gemara brings this one here of Uziyahu. Uziyahu. Anybody know anybody called Uziyahu?
Not a very popular name now.
No. Anybody ever known anyone who was called Uziyahu? Johnny Halpin, you know somebody who was called Uziyahu. He's passed away now, quite young. Jeffrey, you also knew him.
Oh, your friend from King's Road.
Yes, he was a scribe and he lived in King's Road, correct. Uziyahu Brown, who was married to Uzi Brown. He was married to one of the Cohen girls, remember?
Yeah.
He was a Sofer Stam. Nice man. He was called Uziyahu. He's the only person I know called Uziyahu. Anyway, Uziyahu was a king. Who was Uziyahu? Let's have a look. Who at the Tanakh. Here we are in Divrei Hayamim, Chronicles 2, chapter 26. On the screen, Jeffrey, please. Verse 19.
And Uzziah became furious, and his hand was a censer to burn, and his fury with his priests. There's Zara'ah shone upon his forehead before the priests in the house of the Lord, over the altar of incense.
What's going on here? Let me explain to you what's going on here. Uzziyahu was a king. Now, we know, don't we, from our learning, that there is two branches of power in Judaism. There is the Malchut, the kingship, and the Kahuna, the priesthood. And they can't be both. You can't be a king and you can't both be a king and a high priest, correct?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because the high priest has to anoint the king.
All right.
Because they come they're descended from different families. The priests are descended from Levi, and the kings are descended from Yehuda. So you can't be one and the same.
Correct. Now, Uzziyahu, who was from the house of David and therefore from the tribe of Yehuda, wanted to be a Kohen as well. He wanted it all. So he goes into the temple and he starts faffing around with the incense. And he starts to burn the incense. Look at verse 18, Jeffrey, the verse above, please.
And they stood beside Uzziah the king and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn the incense to the Lord, but for the priests, sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you have trespassed, and it will not be glory for you from the Lord."
Okay, so that's very clear, isn't it? Uzziah's gone into the Beit HaMikdash, started to do this incense business, and the priests say, "Hey, get out of here. This is not your business." And then we have the verse you just read. He became furious, and he tried to do it. And what happened? He got
leprosy. Well, leprosy.
Sarat, whatever we call leprosy. It wasn't really leprosy, but that's the translation that's usually used. He gets Sarat. Okay. What was the second curse?
Sarat.
There we go. Sarat. Right. So that's two of the curses that we've found that have come on the house of David. Just as a matter of interest, we had a bout of interest with Rechavam, who was responsible for the breakup of the kingdom because of taxes. Uzziyahu, there's a little bit about Uzziyahu. He was, let's just have a look where he was in the pecking order. He was quite far on, if I'm not mistaken, about 9th generation, if I'm not mistaken. 10th, there you go, the 10th king in the ancient kingdom of Judah. So he was quite a bit further on the situation. So Michael, as you can see, the curses did not come on David himself, but right the way up to the 10th generation. And you'll see one of them is even further on than that.
But I could disagree with you there. These people were punished for something that they did then. They weren't punished for something that David did many generations previously.
Okay, so that's what I was saying before, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give out punishments if you don't deserve it. Uzziyahu and Rechavam both deserved their punishments. What punishment they got, though, it could be determined by prior situations. You understand what I'm saying? Uzziyahu didn't have to get Sorat. He could have got something else for this. We know somebody else who brought incense when they shouldn't have done. And what happened to them? They didn't get Soras.
Burn up.
They were killed.
They were killed. Who am I talking about?
Nadav and Avihu.
Nadav and Avihu, the children of
Aaron.
Aaron. We will read about it in a few weeks' time. So you're right, Michael, and it has to be that way, because otherwise it's not fair, and God is not unfair. So yes, he did something wrong and he deserved a punishment. The punishment that he got was in some ways influenced by the fact that David had cursed Yoav, and the Gemara says that he got them on himself. So that's number 2. Let's have a look at number 3. Number 3. What was the third curse? Let's just go back to that. Lame was right. Yes, lame was the next one. Now then, there was a king called Asa. King Asa. Okay. Have a look at this. Verse 23.
The remainder of the acts of Asa and all his mighty deeds, and all that he accomplished in the cities which he built, they are inscribed in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah. However, during his old age, he was stricken with a foot ailment.
Now, why do we need to be told that? We're not told any of the other kings what kind of sorrows they had. So he got arthritis in his feet in the end. So what? We're being told that because this is the fulfillment of the curse that David gave unto Yoav, and it has come unto Asa. Who was Asa? Let's have a look who Asa was. He was the grandson of Rechavam. Okay, so the great grandson of David. He was the 3rd king of the kingdom of Judah and the 5th king of the house of David. So David, it goes David, Shlomo, Rechavam, Aviah, and Asa. Okay, that's who he was. And he got, there we go. Where's number 2 on here? There's a little footnote on number 2. Let's have a look at the reference. Where are the references? Computer's a bit slow today. There we go. Chronicles 16:12 tells us about the Asa. So that's curse number 3 in David's family. What about number 4? What was number 4? Nofel Bacherev, falls by the sword, killed in battle, basically. Okay, who was killed in battle? Which king of David's family was killed in battle? Let's have a look at.
We'll see.
Here we are. It's in Divrei Hayamim. King Yoshiyahu.
Yeah.
Yoshiyahu. Josiah in English. Yoshiyahu. Who? Anybody know anybody called Yoshiyahu? No. Not a very popular name, Yoshiyahu. Very similar to Yehoshua, though, isn't it? Anyway, Yoshiyahu was a king. And look at this, verse 23 and 24, please, on the screen, Jeffrey.
And the archers shot at King Yoshiyahu, and the king said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am sorely stricken." And his servants took him away from the chariot, and they put him into his second chariot and brought him to Jerusalem. And he died, and he was buried in the graves of his forefathers. And all of Judah and Jerusalem were mourning for Yoshiahu.
Now, I'm sure that there were other kings that were died in battle, because that's what kings did generally. Why do you think that the Gemara, because that's where we get this from, there's the Gemara back on the screen for you, and there it is about Yoshiahu there on the screen. There, Nofel Bacharev mi Yoshiahu tichtiv vayoro hamorim lamelech Yoshiahu. They archers, like Jeffrey's just read, the archers shot at King Yoshiahu. Why have they chosen this one as opposed to any other king that was killed in battle? Any suggestions?
He was a very good king, wasn't he? But
He was a good king, yes.
But he just went against the prophet's instruction not to go to war against, I can't remember, was it against the Egyptians or against the Syrians?
Egyptians. Well done, Michael. Very good. We're going to come to that in a second. We'll come back to that in a second. That's my next little journey. But the reason I think that they chose this particular king as a demonstration of dying by the sword is by what Rav Yehuda Amarav says in the next bit. Sha'asu kol gufo kichvara. They shot him with so many arrows that they turned his whole body into a sieve. Imagine that. He had that many holes in him. He was like a sieve. And so it was a particularly nasty and unpleasant death in battle. And I think that's the reason that the Gemara chooses this particular one. Let's talk about Yoshiahu a little bit. Michael?
Comment.
Yes.
It takes one back to Saul, who asked to be put to death because the archers were going to kill him.
Yes, you're right. Because he was frightened of the archers, and he asked the guy to kill him. Yes, you're absolutely right. And if you remember, when we spoke about that, we spoke about how the tribe of Binyamin were the archers, and the tribe of Yehuda were the swordsmen, interestingly. Let's have a look at Yoshiahu. Michael's already told us. Here is an account of his death, exactly as Michael has said. He was a very good king. He was a king who was responsible for a massive Baal Teshuvah movement. He found a Sefer Torah in the temple, or a Sefer Torah was found in the temple. It was brought to Yoshiahu. He read it and realized what a big mess the religious state of the country was, and he got rid of all the idols and all that stuff, and he became a Baal Teshuvah himself and encouraged everybody else to be a Baal Teshuvah. And he was very, very good until right at the end, the prophet told him, don't go into bed with Egypt. Don't support the Egyptians in their fight against the Babylonians. And he didn't listen. And he didn't listen to the prophet, and he got killed in the battle when he was supporting Egypt. So that was the fourth one. What was the fifth curse?
Starvation.
Starvation. Okay. Now then, which king in David's dynasty had to rely on other people for food? Don't think you'll know this one, so I'll show you. His name, well, he's got a few names actually. His name in here is Yechoniah. Yechoniah. In the Gemara, it's Yechoniah. There's the Gemara. Yeah, here we go. There's the Gemara. Mi Yechoniah. Who was Yechoniah, and where have you heard his name before? before we look at his starvation. Who was he, and where have you heard his name before?
Yeah.
You've all heard his name before.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a clue. You're going to hear it again this week. David, can you help us?
Megillah.
Asher Hagla B'mei Yechonia in the Megillah.
Yeah.
Asher Hagla Yerushalayim min Agola Asher Haglatar Im Yechonia Melech
Yehuda?
something like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Not something like that. Exactly like that. There it is. On the screen. Well done, David Marks. Ish Yehudi Haya B'Shushana Bira. You're all going to say it even. Shemo Mordechai. And his name was Mordechai, this fellow. Ben Yair, Ben Shimi, Ben Kish, Ish Yemini. And then the Baal Koreh will read the next pasuk in the Eicha tune. Asher hagla mirushalayim, im hagola asher haglata, im Yechonia melech Yehuda, asher hagla Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. Okay, who had been exiled from Jerusalem with the exile that was exiled with Yechonia, king of Yehuda. So what happened was, how long did Yechonia reign for? Anybody know? 3 months and 10 days. Bit like Liz Truss, really.
Lahavdil.
Lahavdil. Yes. So let's have a look at Yechonia. Now, so let's have a look what happened with him. Let's have a look what happened with him. So he was exiled, right? He was exiled by Nebuchadnezzar. And have a look over here. Before I show you this, I have to tell you that Yechonia had some other names as well. Otherwise, it won't make sense to you. Let's go to the Wikipedia of Yechonia. And Yechonia was also known as Konya and Yehoyachin. Yehoyachin was another name for Yechonia. I didn't know that they were one and the same person, but they were. And he was the penultimate king of Yehuda before the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. And in the Malachim 2, he's not known as Yechonia, he's known as Yehoyachim. So here it is in verse 27 on the screen, Jeffrey, please.
And it was in the 37th year of the exile of Yechonia, king of Judah, in the 12th month and the 27th day of the month, that evil Merodach, king of Babylonia, in the year of his coronation, lifted up the head of Yehoiakim, king of Judah, and released him from prison. And he spoke with him kindly and placed his throne above the throne of the kings who were with him in Babylon. And he changed his prison garb, and he ate meals before him regularly all the days of his life. And his meals, regular meals, were given him from the king, each day's need in its day, all the days of his life.
So in other words, he was totally reliant on the king of Babylon for food. He was given his food at the grace of the king of Babylon. He didn't have any of his own food. And therefore, that was the curse being put on the king of Yehuda, one of David's descendants, that he did not have the ability to provide food for himself. Now then, Yechonia was this Yehoyachin is the same as oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. I forgot what I was going to say for a minute. Look at this name here. Who was the king of Bavel at this time?
Evel Merodach.
Evil Moradach. Looks like evil Mordechai, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, this tells you something very interesting. There's the name in Hebrew.
Evil.
Evil. Forget that one. What about the other one?
Mordechai.
Moradach. What does that sound like?
Mordechai.
Right. So what have we got a Jew being called Mordechai for? There we are. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira ushmo Mordechai. Here's this Jewish man in Shushan. He's called Mordechai. One of the, and I'm going to speak about this actually tonight at the Siyum a little bit. One of the lectures that we had in Project Esther was from Shani Tarragon, who spoke about the idea that the whole of Megillat Esther is a veiled criticism of the people of Babylon, the Jews of Babylon, for not making Aliyah and for staying behind when they could have left. And one of the things, the questions that is asked is, why is this one of the psukim that we read out? There are 4 psukim we read out loud on the Megillah, and this is one of them. So the simple answer is, well, this is the first time that we meet Mordechai. So we say that. But so what? We don't make a big fanfare when we first meet Esther. We don't read her pasuk out. Why should we do that? And what Shani wants to say, I don't know if it's her own idea or if she read it somewhere else, but what she said was, this was a veiled criticism by saying, Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira ushmo Mordechai. You've got a Jew, and his name is Mordechai, who is named after the king of Babylon, who was named Evil Mordach. Mordach being Marduk, the king of the god of war, the Babylonians' god of war. And what this pasuk is saying is, what on earth is going on here? You've got a Jew being called after a god of war. It's a bit like being called Paul or Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? I'm looking round the. I'm looking round. You're the only one, Peter, on the screen with a proper Goyish name.
Wait, you can call me Pinchas.
Pinchas. We're going to call you Pinchas. Yeah, we're going to call you. Change your thingy on the bottom of your screen to Pinchas for next week, okay? Because we shouldn't be calling him Mordechai. He had no right to be called Mordechai. He should have been called whatever he was called. His proper name that he got at his bris. He wouldn't have been called Mordechai at his bris.
Wait a second. We're getting carried away.
Wait, I've not finished. I'm getting more carried away. Yeah, wait. Right. Esther. What was she called? Esther.
Hadassah.
Yeah. What was her real name?
Hadassah.
Esther.
So what's she being called Esther for? What's Esther?
Hidden.
Or in Hebrew, it means hidden. Why was she called Esther? What was
she was in the Achashverosh's harem.
Astarte was the god of fertility.
Astarte.
So just as Mordechai was named for the god of war, Esther was also given the name of a goddess. What's going on here? Hadassah, he Esther. Hadassah is Esther. She should have been called Hadassah. So that's the name Mordechai and Esther. It's according to this theory that the Megillah is a criticism of the people. This is part of the criticism. Don't your names. What were the zechuyot? What were the merits that were allowed out of Egypt? They didn't change their language, they didn't change their mode of dress, and they didn't change
their names.
And so this is a veiled criticism of Mordechai and Esther. For, first of all, what you're doing being in there in the first place, you should have made Aliyah when you were allowed to, because 3 years before, 10 years before this took place, 3 years before Achashverosh rose to the throne, his predecessor Choresh, Cyrus, had allowed the return to Zion. They didn't take it up. They were there. And not only that, they've integrated and assimilated so much that they've got Goyish names. Now you can have a go, Hannah. Go on.
I said we're getting a bit carried away because for the most part, those of us who lived outside of Israel had two names, or at least two names, all our lives. Where I come from, people had a Jewish name and a Goyish name, and you went to school with your Goyish name, and you lived the rest of your life with your Jewish name.
Okay,
So
well, that's absolutely fine. That happened to me and everybody else on this screen as well, except for David, who's got a double name, which is the same anyway. Michael, who's not even called Michael, I don't think.
Yeah,
If I'm not mistaken. Yes, there you go. So Michael, and I'm not even called Jonathan. So it's a whole big mishmash. You get the point that I'm making, though.
but what I'm saying is it was standard practice once we lived outside of Israel.
And you know what? It may have been standard practice in Bavel, but nevertheless, there is the point to be making. Anyway, that was just an aside. We're over time. We've gone through the 5 curses, and we've got through most of what I wanted to get through today. But yes, we did. We've still got 4 little journeys to do that I thought we might have got through. I didn't think we would, but I got them ready anyway. Bezrat Hashem. We will do that next week. I'm not sure whether I'll be here next week because I'm going to England. Can't remember when my flight is. But let's say we will try next week. Shushan Purim, we will try and carry on with Shmuel Bet next week. If not next week, then it will be sometime in the future. Any questions on today's shir? Yes, David.
Yeah, fascinating Gemara you just brought. Problem I have with it is that the first 2 cases, it appears that the 2 kings that were mentioned brought on their own punishment, whereas in the last 3 cases, it doesn't appear that those kings had done anything wrong.
Well, okay, let's just take each one at a time then. The first 2 you've said. Certainly, Yoshiyahu did something wrong. He didn't listen to the prophet, and he went in with Egypt. That's clear.
But
it's
deserving of death.
Yeah.
And the reason that he didn't listen to the prophet is that he thought that Hashem had accepted the teshuvah of the people at the time, and in his own eyes, unfortunately, he thought that the people were frummer than they actually were.
Well, that's what happens when you don't listen to the prophet. So I think
deserving of death.
Well, we could certainly make a case out that he did do something wrong. Okay, not for us to decide what was his punishment and what was his not punishment.
Remember that Yoshiyahu was considered in his time to be Mashiach.
Yes, indeed, and so therefore he's held to a higher level. So I think I can push back on Yoshiyahu. What about Asa? He was the cripple, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What kind of fellow was he? I don't really know much about him. Let's have a look. He was zealous in maintaining the traditional worship of God and in rooting out idolatry. That sounds good. And then he formed an alliance. He died greatly honored by his people and was considered for the most part a righteous king. But he threw the prophet Hanani in jail and oppressed some of the people at the same time. Maybe that's why he got lame. And it's not such a terrible punishment, that's probably the least of them. So maybe that was what he did wrong, David. And the final one, Yechoniah. Yechoniah, what did he do? Let's have a look. He only reigned for 3 months and 10 days, as I told you. So he probably didn't have much chance to do anything wrong.
It was probably his first budget.
Yeah. I don't know, but I think if you look, you'll find it, because your question's a good question. But I think the answers must be there. Because that's the answer that I gave to Michael earlier on, isn't it? That Michael's question, why it's not fair? Why didn't David get it himself? Why his descendants? Well, the answer is that they all deserved it one way or the other in God's cheshbon, if you like. It's not for our cheshbon to work that out. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, please join us tonight at, I think it's 7:30, isn't it, Avril? 7:30 tonight at North Netanya Young Israel Shul Hall for the Siyum of Project Esther. All very welcome. I'm hoping that we'll have a very good turnout. Should be a very interesting evening and good fun too. Right. Shavua Tov, everybody. See you on tonight, or if not tonight, on Wednesday for the. Oh no, tomorrow night, Tefillah Shir. Tomorrow night, Tefillah Shir.
Sure.
Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov.